Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Timber!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Foul. I can't believe that.
Good time of day, and welcome to episode 129 of Americans Watching the Footy, the 2023 Round 23 recap. We got some main characters to talk about. We got shirtless people. We got some bad umpiring, close finishes, Cats missing finals for just the second time in the last 17 years. What else? Well, we've got a lot of drama that ends up taking a lot of the drama out of round 24. It seemed like collectively there was enough drama for 2 rounds, and most of it was used up this weekend rather than next. Yeah, I think round 24 is going to be more about, like, send-offs and stuff. But really, a lot of those send-offs have already happened. If you're talking send-offs, we know about the Eagles send-offs, but otherwise, you expect a couple from Geelong? Yeah, I think, and I'll get to that in a bit. There's 1 or 2 that I think will probably be going. But you'd expect a round that starts with first versus second to have drama. And that game sort of delivered. Pies were on the back foot from the beginning with some of the outs that they had. And the Lions just demolished from turnover and from transition and led nearly the entire way. Collingwood 15-10-100, defeated by the Brisbane Lions 19-10-124. With this result, the minor premiership is still up for grabs, and the Lions work back their percent enough that they're basically even with Collingwood. So, in nearly every circumstance, a Pies loss on Friday, coupled with a Lions win on Saturday, would give Brisbane the minor premiership. Is there any scenario where, there's such close losses or wins that doesn't happen? Maybe, considering they're both at 123.2%. Collingwood's can almost be routed up to 0.3, maybe if they're both high-scoring enough 1-point margins, maybe? Somebody else has probably done the math already. I'll trust Glicko to have done it. Well, let's see. I'm gonna mess with that right now. Squiggle to the rescue? I think just about any scenario would do it. Yeah, I guess I just ran the numbers for, what if, Collingwood lost and Brisbane won 90-89. Well, it's because anything that isn't a win by a big enough margin would put a dent in your percentage still. And by the way, the Lions have not won a minor premiership since when, Ethan? When they were still Fitzroy? How about 1913? Yeah, even in their three-peat years, they never won a minor premiership. That's kind of hard to believe. You know what? I think about it. I see why that could be difficult. The way, a premiership can kind of take its toll on the start of the ensuing season. So I get it, but that's kind of hard to believe if you're that dominant that you would think at least once it would happen, right? You'd think, yeah. Let's see. There was some off-field drama in this game, too. Lions banner started off the round in a great way. Our thoughts are with the Pies tonight. The G to Marvel is quite the flight. That's also kind of a shot at Richmond. I don't know if that's the intent. And guess what? It's now a dig at the coach of their rivals. It's especially funny now, and we'll get into that more later, but that Hardwick is going to coach a team that plays hardly ever at the G, and almost all of their Melbourne trips are to Marvel. Man, I hate coming here. But I gotta say, I didn't watch this game as closely as you did, but I saw enough. It was pretty funny. Late in the third quarter, I kind of dozed off a little bit during that stretch when Collingwood made a good push, and then I woke up and saw that I had missed Magpie Jesus' nightly appearance. I think that was right around three-quarter time. It was the goal at the very it the third quarter it was Brody Majacek, and that cut it to 12. That was really the one chance they had. And then Brisbane started the fourth nicely, ran away with it from there. And I just thought, really, Brisbane's forward play was terrific. Midfield was obviously very good. Lachie Neale leading that with 31 disposals and 10 clearances, but their forward pressure and with their skill with the ball, whether it's kicking for goal, running, passing, you name it, has been so good that they don't have like a truly elite defense, and just a solid defense can be enough. Like, you look at this game, this looks like a team that could win the whole thing. And if they weren't so bad at the G, or so good at shitting themselves at the G, depending on how you want to frame it, it would be really easy to pick them right now as the team to win the whole thing. I had pinpointed that Neil would have a bit of a bounce back game and probably get 3 votes, and he probably earned it in this game. Collingwood don't have a true tagger in their midfield, and so that was an easy way for Neil to victimize them. That's definitely a weakness in this Collingwood team for all the things that they have. That's something that, if you have a guy like that, and we all know they're going to be facing guys like that in finals, that's something that can get exploited. And then they may not have an elite marking defense. Jack Payne didn't have a great game, not a great matchup for him there in the Collingwood forward line. Dan McStay victimized him a bit. Brody Mychek as well when he managed to get that matchup. But they're such a good ball-moving team out of the back third, thanks to Kadeen Coleman, Brandon Starcevich, Darcy Wilmot. They were already the best-ranked transitioning team between 50s over the past, 6 or so weeks, and they surpassed their high averages there, too. I will say this positively about Collingwood. Obviously, they were missing guys, but I think Dan McStay, the way he's able to win one-on-one battles and cause nightmares for usually very good opposing tall defenders, that's the sort of thing that kind of exemplifies the whole Craig McRae system of just having guys that contribute more than the stat sheet shows, whether that's, the stuff you get out of Nathan Murphy, Bo McCreary. I think McStay, now that he's healthy, is a big part of that as well. And that's one of the things that will make this team scary heading into finals, even as, they aren't going to be running in on a hot streak. Their biggest goal is just get healthy. Yeah, big issue for Collingwood. They've lost 3 of 4, and no premiers since the Sydney Swans in 2012 have gone into finals with a negative record in their last 5 home and away games. So they'll have to reverse some longer-standing trends there. I would probably still give them the highest odd to win this thing if Darcy Moore's back healthy enough, if Nick Dacos can get back. But the gap between them and everyone else is a lot smaller. Really, you could honestly make a case for any of the 8 teams that are going to make it, plus a couple other teams that, if they had gotten in, would have a case. It's actually going to be pretty wide open. And obviously, it's a system that heavily favors the top 4, which I like. I like rewarding a good regular season. But if there was a year for someone outside of the top 4 to do it, I think this would be the year. We're going to, during a finals preview, when we talk about, what can this team do to win it? What can this team do? There will be, genuine reasons to make a case for all of them, which is pretty cool and pretty rare. The other refreshing thing for Collingwood was Mason Cox as the substitute. Worked really well, was their best ruck on the night, was working really well, getting taps down to Scott Pendlebury in particular. You notice the impact that he had. I'm glad he got rewarded with a goal in the fourth quarter. I love it. Normally teams go for speed as the sub, and the subs in this game were Mason Cox and Jackson Pryor. Yeah, Pryor's got some speed, but Cox, obviously the goal was just being able to back up the talls there. Maybe there was some concern around Darcy Cameron's health. Turns out it was a concussion to debutante Jacob Ryan that forced their hand in the second quarter. So it has not been a fun time to debut if your name is Jacob, regardless of how you spell Jacob, regardless of what that middle consonant is. Because, I think 6 weeks ago was Jacob Bauer doing his hamstring after 2 touches. So, I guess maybe it's limited to just Jacobs in the Big 4 and in Melbourne in particular. You can't limit it to one venue, though. But, this was much more a statement from the Lions than it was from the Pies. As we said, one in the midfield, converted off turnovers really well. Also, the turnover margin wasn't big, but in the first half, Collingwood only managed 2 goals, 5 off turnovers, while Brisbane kicked 6 goals straight. And then also, as is typical for the Lions against Collingwood, Charlie Cameron showed out again. He kicked 4. He has now kicked 17 goals won in his last 4 games against Collingwood. Does that say something about how they don't really have a great small matchup for him? Isaac Quaynor tends to be a bit of a looser defender, and Cameron was able to outmaneuver him when that one-on-one was present. That's another weakness, no great small one-on-one defenders. And with the Lions having enough talls to occupy, Collingwood's tall key guys, especially without Darcy Moore in the mix, I can see why that was a problem. Yeah, Isaac Quainer, who actually didn't look like he was, perfect in every marking contest in this game. And there's a lot of talk about, does he get some extra love from the umpires? Let him get away with a lot of contact. Regardless of if he does or doesn't, the fact is having him out there without Moore becomes a lot more winnable. And I think that's something you see with any good defensive tandem. That's not exclusive to Collingwood. Going back to the start of this game, I found it extremely funny that John Noble scored Collingwood's first goal, considering there were some rumors, aka a tweet from Tom Brown, suggesting that Noble was going to be a late out. So I wonder how well that paid. I mean, I would think he would be one of the longest odds to kick your team's first goal in any week. And to do it here in particular just makes it even funnier. And you think Tom Brown would have the right sort of news coming in, considering his dad's, Collingwood's CEO or something? Or president, I think. For those of you that aren't familiar with the American baseball media, you need to learn about Bob Nightingale. He just curses things. No, he also just objectively gets things wrong. Like, he's named the wrong All-Star game at the MVP from the press box at the All-Star game. What? Yes. That's a new low. It was near the All-Star game was in Cleveland. Another interesting thing about this game, they're usually on celebrity sightings pretty quickly on these broadcasts, especially on 7. And somehow I was the one to realize, wait, that's Luke Combs before anyone on the 7 commentary team did. Luke Combs had 2 shows at Rod Laver Arena those next couple nights, and so just took in the game at Marvel Stadium between Eddie Betts and Neville Jetta. I love this because not only did he see the 2 best teams in a pretty entertaining contest for multiple reasons. It wasn't a down-to-the-wire game, but, you got action the whole way. You had scoring. You had things to keep a newcomer entertained. You had a 10-goal first quarter, get you engaged right from the start. They had him seated next to those guys. It would be like bringing, some big British star or some, what? Let's see. Try to think of, a big foreign star that would make for a really funny example. I got it. Bringing Lorde to an NFL game and seating her next to, Travis Kelce or Rob Gronkowski. I was going to say, bringing Jimin or somebody from BTS and having him sit next to Ed Reed. No. Lorde. Although Lorde does already know football, considering that she's actually a 45-year-old geologist from Colorado. Right, she is Lorde. Yeah. I mean, I guess basketball, it isn't as great a comparison because, it's an international sport. And you already have, internationally known people. So then I think with the personalities, the idea of, having a legend of the game sitting alongside him in the box. Yeah, I don't think any of the NFL personnel... Oh, you know what? Got it. Lorde watching her first NFL game sitting next to Ocho Cinco. There we go. That's your winner. I don't know why I didn't think of that sooner. The other big thing out of this game, the big thing out of this game, honestly, it wasn't even the result. It was Deven Robertson getting his jumper shredded. There are other main characters this weekend that we'll get into, but Deven Robertson won the weekend. You want to ask who won this weekend? It was Deven Robertson. Before this whole incident where, of course, it was Braden Maynard who ended up shredding his jumper, and then I think it was Bo McCreary who ended up tugging on it and causing Devin to just be like, fuck it, I'm throwing this off. The throw was the highlight of it. And then just, being out there for 6 minutes anyway, after that jumper rip, and just being there shirtless for a bit. Before the whole incident, before the game, I believe, he had 11,100 or so Instagram followers. As we're recording this, he is above 42,000. It's almost quadruple. Also, the combination of BG saying oh, he's having so much fun,
Having the time of his life.
And he looked like he wants to kill somebody at the same time. And then just he had him tensing his muscles the whole time. It reminds me of this clip that I cannot find. It was when Bangladesh hosted a cricket World Cup. Yeah, okay, they hosted a few out there, I think. Looks like 2011. And there was this clip, the broadcasters saying they're going to get eliminated quickly, but the fans have gotten to have a great time hosting. And they zoom in on this guy in the stands that just looked like he wants to kill somebody. It was really good. It was featured on great American TV show, The Soup. I haven't seen it either. Baraboo! You want me to let Baraboo in? Has he meowed? I hear him. Brian, do you want in? Brian, tell us if you want in. I already gave Neil's stat. Yeah, I'll keep going. Or you? The Lions have Robertson out of contract after this year. The Lions have offered him another one. I am praying that he comes home to the West. He was a Perth Demon. He's actually a nephew of 2006 Eagles Premiership player and 7-year captain of the club, Darren Glass, which I did not know before this week. And I just want like that crudely drawn in MS Paint Eagles jumper on him to come true. Or maybe he's just going to get his next jumper tattooed on him and just have like the giant number 2 on the back. No, it's like the commercial. I think it was for like a t-shirt printing thing or something. I forget, where like there's like a 5K and the runners don't have shirts and they're just getting the bibs stapled onto them. He should just get like a full torso tattoo of whatever jersey you're going to be wearing. I really like this idea. What happens if you have to wear a Clash? Get it painted over for the game? Get a tattoo? No. He's going to have more ink than fat on him at some point. Connor McKenna had 26 disposals, gained 559 meters. Josh Dunkley, a behind because he doesn't kick goals. 25 disposals, 15 contested possessions, 8 tackles. What's he kicked, like 3 goals for the entire year? He's kicked 2 goals, 6 for the year. Kicked 18 last year. That was his career high. 72 goals in 136 games. Dane Zorgo, 23 disposals, 9 marks. Jared Berry, a behind in 21 disposals. Kadeem Coleman, a goal, 21 disposals, 7 marks, 600 meters gained. Oscar McInerney, 2 behinds, 41 hitouts, 16 disposals. Brisbane were plus 23 in marks. Collingwood plus 16 in tackles. Tide was going against them. They didn't possess the ball nearly as much. I'm not surprised by that. And also with the pressure game they play, think about guys like Beau McCreary, for example, and one of his tackles was dangerous, and pretty clearly so. A dangerous tackle on Darcy Wilmot where he pinned the arm. That 1-match suspension has been accepted, so he won't be playing again for 3 weeks. Collingwood's disposal count was jointly led by Tom Mitchell and Scott Pendlebury on 31. Pendlebury kicked 1-1, also 12 clearances, 10 score involvements in 517 meters. Real chance for him to get some votes here. Josh Dacos kicked 1-2 from 26 disposals. Feels weird in our notes we didn't actually have to write an initial for any Dacos this week. Jack Crisp had 24 disposals and 9 tackles, looking more like himself. Braden Maynard, 20 disposals and 1 ripping of a jumper. He was the captain for this game for Collingwood. Darcy Cameron had a goal from 20 hitouts and 17 disposals, but again, on the ruck side, I think Mason Cox outdid him. Saturday began with the triple send-off at the G. Richmond 15-16, 101, defeating North Melbourne 10-12, 72. Jack Reefel did manage 1 goal, got a hanger late as well, but couldn't convert off it. Trent Caution had a few nice plays, including an assist to Noah Balta. Got 3 disposals in that whole sequence in the early part of the 4th quarter. The real highlight from him, though, was in his post-game interview with Sarah Jones. He went out like Dan Hanbury and cursed. It was talking about playing alongside Revo, and he said, "It's been an absolute fucking joy." I'm glad that they don't censor that in Australia. And I love that people like within the media aren't horrified by it. Because stateside they are. Well, you should see when this sports commentator guy, who's sort of also a conservative commentator guy, was on CNN and said that he believed in the First Amendment and boobs. It was just very out of line for the network, which is why it was so shocking. But yeah, no, it was the overreaction. True, but yeah, like, now, Clay Travis is purposely transgressive at times. But yeah, I am all in favor of saying funny things on TV. Especially when you're going out like that. Just made me think of Dan Hanbury again. I feel like Australia was probably a country that was like, even though I haven't seen enough clips of it, like, interview bombing, people running in and grabbing the microphone and yelling stuff. Baba Booey, dicks out for Harambe, fuck her right in the pussy, etc. I thought that to say that last one, all you needed to do was just stand up on a table in a library. Yes. Or a cafeteria, I forget. Either way. Whichever one, it happened. Jack Zeeble probably had the biggest highlight out of any of the 3 retirees with the hanger he took on Liam Baker. We'll mention that again later, but I'll just say it now. I think that was probably the best mark of the round. I love when players have highlights like this and the commentary immediately goes to, is he sure he wants to hang him up? North didn't play that poorly, but goalless 4th quarter, they kicked 5 behinds and allowing 7 goals in the 2nd quarter. That 2nd quarter was 7-3 to 4-4. But there weren't a ton of stretches where it was like, this is a clear mismatch. Early in the 4th, Richmond ripped off the 3 quick goals to put the game out of reach. But it's not like North, they only played a half or whatever that they've done at times. No, and they responded to that poor second quarter with much better pressure in the third. They got some center clearances as well. They fought back there. They actually won the third quarter, brought it down to a 9-point margin at three-quarter time. We're kicking more accurately for goal as well. And then, well, that reversed in the fourth where they kicked no goals 5. And Richmond's defense held up enough. They'd had the most scores against in the 4 weeks leading up to this game. But the Tigers' cause was also helped. Well, more was the Kangas' cause hindered by the late out of Luke Davies-Uniacke with a foot injury. Flynn Perez came in for him, and Perez obviously doesn't play in that same spot, and losing Davies-Uniacke is going to be tough any week. Hugh Greenwood did get his hand on some contested possessions, but really wasn't enough. Best player for North was pretty clearly Taron Thomas, who I know you would love to see in hoops next year. Yeah, there was a discussion after the loss on Saturday night, hosted by, I believe it was Chap Cat. Some of the guys from the Hoop Show were in it as well. But people were just throwing around various names to target, and I think Taron Thomas would be great because he can play as a small defender, he can play in the midfield, had really good senses. It's not just that he pursues the ball well, it's that he knows where the ball's heading at just about all times. He knows how to insert himself into the action. Imagine Thomas going along with Atkins and Bryn on the inside. Could be pressure machines there. And he seems like he's worn out his welcome at Arden Street, so it could be another bit of a rehabilitation project that the Cats could latch onto and probably take to a flag, because that's what they did last year. Also, let's know, you could even throw him in forward if he has to. He's got goal-kicking ability. He's a really skilled and well-rounded player. Along with Zeebel's last game mark and Harry Sheasel breaking the first-year player disposal record, Thomas was the clear standout for North, kicking 2 goals, 2 from 25 disposals, 13 contested possessions. He had 12 score involvements and gained 708 meters. Meanwhile, best on ground for Richmond and probably getting the 3 votes, Dustin Martin, kicking 3 goals straight from 31, 11 score involvements and 7 marks. Had a really nice finish on the outside of his right boot for one of them as well. Dusty's back to being Dusty. Amazing that he's starting in these forward situations a lot and still getting the high disposal numbers anywhere from the mid-20s to the 30s. Wonder what's going to happen next week, though, without Koch, and maybe see him thrown into more center bounces. It was something I thought they were going to do against the Bulldogs, but he was managed for that game. Richmond's lineup next week is going to be pretty interesting, seeing how they end up covering in the midfield. Is it more of an opportunity for Thompson Dow, who I thought had worked into things nicely in these past couple? Maybe you get Matthew Coulthard a full game in on the wing. They don't have anything to play for, so they have nothing to lose. I mean, they could be playing to keep Port from having a home qualifying final. That would require a Brisbane Lions loss, which is possible. They know going into Sunday if that's the case. For them, it's a dead rubber. Also, why the fuck would you punch Jack Zeebel? And why have 2 footy players, 2 AFL players, been coward punched just completely unprovoked in pubs over the last, I think it's been month and a half? Because it happened to Jeremy Cameron as well, and now it happened to Zeebel outside a bar in South Yarra on Saturday night, and he likely needs facial surgery. This is another of those if I had 2 nickels things, but it's a less fun one. I don't understand it at all. His wife was there as well. Just no. If you were to pick a North player to get involved with this, to get punched, I mean, look, guys like Taron Thomas would be kind of an easy pick because of that prior off-field stuff. So taking that out of the equation, I'm going to go with Cam Zurhaar, the King of Marvel. I could see that happening to him. The difference is Cam would be more willing to fight back, I think. Oh, yeah. Some Richmond numbers outside of Dusty's, because I already gave him. Jacob Hopper with 28 disposals and 8 marks. Shea Bolton kicked 4-1 from 25 with 12 score involvements and 7 marks. Damn, he's fun, and it's scary to think that he hasn't peaked yet. Jack Ross with 23 disposals. Dion Prestia a goal from 21. Tim Taranto with 21 disposals and 8 tackles, a down game for him. Wondering if maybe that was the cost of trying to get Koch in the ball more at times. Jaden Short had 20 disposals. Tony Nankervis 1-1 from 24 hitouts on 16 disposals and 7 tackles. Noah Balta started out in defense, but was not doing a great job on Nick Larkey. I called from the beginning it should be Tyler Young on him. They made that switch. Balta ended up going forward and kicked 2 goals in the fourth, 2 consecutive goals, in fact. He had 10 marks as well. Tigers won stoppage clearances 26-13. They took 31 more marks, including a 24-13 advantage inside 50. Harry Sheasel, 37 disposals, 7 marks, 544 meters. Almighty again, he broke Scott Russell's record for disposals in a debut season. Russell's record was 574 back in 1990. Big difference there. Russell won the flag in his first year. Bailey Scott, 28 disposals, 667 meters. Jack Zeebel in his final game of the Hind and 23 disposals. Daniel Howe, 19 disposals, 7 tackles. And Nick Larkey, 6 goals in the behind off 13 disposals. I think Oscar Allen kind of overshadows what Nick Larkey has done. Like, this dude deserves a lot of credit. Allen and Larkey both, just these cellar-dwelling forwards that may not be in the greatest of health at times, but still play through everything and are at the center of opposing scouting reports every week. If you're going into play North as a defender, he is the first guy on the board, and he still does this to you. Gold Coast 13-9-87, defeated by Carlton 13-13-91. A really fascinating game. 4 very different quarters, and Charlie Curnow balling out when it came down to it. The Suns kicked the first 5 goals, led 41-8 at quarter time, 48-8 early in the second, then surrendered a 39-1 run, led by just 2 going into the half. Good back and forth third, where I'd say the Blues were the better team, but inaccuracy hurt them. They kicked 1-7 to Gold Coast's 2-0, and then pretty even fourth, but Curnow clutched up at the end. And it wasn't just his goal kicking, even though he did kick 5-1. He kicked the goal to cut the lead to a single point. They had actually trailed by 13 with 13 minutes left. Then Jesse Motlop set up Jack Martin, who struggled to start the game and then really settled in. Then Curnow got thumped in the back by Charlie Ballard on a mark. Probably should have been given a 50, which would have let him kick from the goal square, but he didn't need it. He scored anyway. Then he hit Harry Mackay behind the defense for the go-ahead goal with 7:20 left. So he has the goal to cut it to 1. He has the assist on the goal that gives him the lead. And then he drops back into defense with the Blues trying to bleed out the clock up by 5 late. He drops a would-be intercept mark, but is ruled to go out off Jack Lukosius' heel, so it's Carlton ball instead of just a throw-in. This is totally inadvertent, which I don't love that. It is out on the full. You saw it in the Swans game as well, where Harold Golden was penalized for it. See, I hate that where it's like not the spirit of the rule, but it's the law. You know, it's one thing if it is like deliberately kicked. I feel like you need to go off like the NHL terminology and look for like a distinct kicking motion. Whereas in this case, it's like off the Curnow just fumbled the ball and it went off Lukosius. That should not be a Carlton free kick. Noah Anderson nearly gave the Suns the game with a right snap with 35 seconds left. Barely missed. The Suns did get the ball back one last time. Sean Lemons delivers it into the forward 50, and there is Curnow to seal it with the intercept mark, and the finals route is over for Carlton. They'll be playing finals for the first time since 2013, and they'll actually be in the top 8 for the first time since 2011. They've won 9 in a row. Observations from this game, there were a lot of them. First off, as the Suns got out to that early lead, it was because Carlton defenders couldn't get back, and the Suns were just blowing past him and had numbers deep. Mabior Chol was brought into the lineup, I believe, on Friday with Ben King still out. And I don't get why Chol wasn't in sooner, because it's not like you have too many tall forwards with him, Casbolt, and King, because Chol showed in this game he can play at the half forward or even on the wing and did really well there. Oh, he's a good contested mark always. And Ben King, we saw in 2021 before he did his ACL, he's a great running half forward as well, so there's enough versatility there. It's not like one of the forward spots is just taken up by Levi Casbolt, and that's it. And Casbolt was defended really well in this game. It's no surprise that the Blues were able to play the best on Casbolt, considering they had a fair amount of practice on him over his years on the list there, and that was where Jacob Wiedering really shone. That said, Casbolt is such a physical, bruising presence that I'm impressed by anyone who can stop him. Back to Chol, there were some moments in the middle quarters where it looked like his effort was really lacking. That's the one thing that needs to be better. I thought it was, like, tactically, you could see some of what Stephen King was trying to get at. It's a shame that he's not going to get a full season to really, as a head coach of a club, but, like,
I can already tell this is a guy who's a valuable part of a staff. We're not going to get the evaluation of if he's head coach material.
What if the West Coast Eagles get to him?
I mean, I guess that's possible, but I liked how early on the Suns used the wing to open things up and then started attacking through the middle. What I didn't like, unfortunately, and we talked about this guy in our preview, we were excited for him. Lloyd Johnston's debut did not go well. He looked very uncomfortable in contests and had some turnover issues. He ended up getting subbed out for Darcy McPherson. Hopefully it's just one of those things, first game jitters. Yeah, great story if a kid from a town as small as his ends up making it big.
Yeah, Matt always was the one to really victimize him at times. It's a matchup that I kind of expected. Always as a small player in that full forward line, playing in a pocket has worked really well. And it's difficult for the Blues to find that forward mix when you've got all these smalls that are showing well. Always, Mop, Jack Martin isn't big by any means, and yet you're bringing back in Harry Mackay. They made it work in this game, which is really encouraging.
I really like Martin. This was not his best game, but always is such a spark anytime the ball's near him. And then you got to find a way to keep Jesse Motlop in. Another 2 goals, 2 behinds off 17 disposals for him. He just, as I've said before, he's a guy who just makes shit happen. He's exciting, he's fun, and he creates a level of chaos that they really benefit from. On some teams, I don't think it would work so well. Like, I don't know, the Saints probably would not be able to find a great spot for him, but on this Carlton team, it's perfect. Defensively, other than Jacob Wiedering, I think you saw the guy who was kind of the barometer for their defense in this game was Brody Kemp. With their lineup in his current state, if he's playing well, they have the sort of defense that can take you on a really long, successful finals run. If he's struggling like he did earlier in the season, it gets ugly and you give up 41 points in a quarter. Nick Newman led the Blues with 31 disposals, 9 marks. Zach Fisher, a behind in 28 disposals. Sam Doherty, 25 disposals, 593 meters. Patty Dow, another one who even Carlton fans were saying, like, Geelong should be on the phone with him because he would have a much more secure spot there.
And he's out of contract, and watch Sam Walsh take his spot, the 22.
He had a behind with 24 disposals, 7 clearances, 532 meters. Blake Akers, 23 disposals, 652 meters. George Hewitt, 23 disposals, 15 contested possessions, and an octopus. Adam Saad, 22 disposals, 12 intercepts, 11 contested possessions. Charlie Curnow, 5 goals, a behind, 18 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 502 meters. Honestly, I know he's had bigger games goal-kicking-wise. This was the most impressed I was with him because of the variety of ways he got involved, whether he was taking contested marks, whether he was running. They ended up switching Charlie Ballard off of him at one point. I believe they tried Sam Collins. Just the variety of ways he impacted this game, it was way more than your traditional tall forward. It was really exciting. And then Jacob Wiedering, 16 disposals, 9 intercepts, 8 marks. The Suns actually had 13 more inside 50s, which I would not have thought, especially considering you had that quarter where they kicked 2 goals to Carlton's 1-7. And yet, yeah, inside 50s favored the Suns 64-51, but efficiency, Gold Coast 35.9%, Carlton 54.9%. Blues landed 11 more tackles, but the Suns had 14 more tackles inside 50. Just a strange game because you had so many, again, like every quarter taking on its own sort of life. A fun study, though. This would be a fun one to go back and watch, knowing the outcome and looking at it and thinking like, you can go back and circle a couple of plays that decided it. Or, I'm sure you could also find plays that, like, if Carlton had executed better, they would have won by more. This was a compelling game. Also, as much as it disappoints me to constantly see the crowd at Gold Coast be so visiting fan heavy, Blues fans showed up, and there were some pretty good videos of them cheering as the team was coming out of the rooms afterwards. To get that sort of reception just for making finals doesn't really reflect well on your club's recent history, but nearly 20,000 there. And I'd say it was probably close to 2/3 Carlton.
And Patrick Cripps, congratulations. You'll be playing finals for the first time. After next week, it'll be 181 games. So you won't approach the record. However, another player in this game will approach and likely get the record for his own, because this was David Swallow's 219th game, inaugural son, and he just has 11 to go to equal and 12 to surpass Trevor Barker for that record, and barring major injuries, he'll get that next year. Swallow was a focal point for the Suns, kicking 4-3 from 16 disposals at 8 marks. But once again, it was Sam Flanders leading the disposal count for him with 36.
He has the most disposals in the entire AFL over the last 6 weeks, which coincides with the 6 weeks that Stephen K has coached.
Feels like a free kick for holding the ball. Holding the ball. Holding the ball.
Stupid sexy Flanders!
Took Miller out of goal from 29 disposals and 8 tackles. Please, let next year be his Brownlow year. Ben Ainsworth kicked 2 goals from 27 disposals, 7 marks and 537 meters. He occupied the wing for a decent amount of this game and was considered by Suns fans to be their best, and I understand that. Noah Anderson kicked him behind from 24 disposals and 9 clearances. How amazing would it have been had he had another game winner? Rory Atkins with 23, Matt Rowell with 20, 14 contested, 9 tackles, 8 clearances, and 484 meters gained. Damian Hardwick is going to have fun with him. And Sam Collins had 11 intercepts in defense. He said he was switched on to Charlie Curnow at times. Tough matchup for anybody, and is a more physical defender than Ballard, so that makes sense. But yeah, we aren't going to see Stephen King coaching these Suns long term. I hope Hardwick keeps him around on staff. It's a 6-year deal for Dimma. It was rumored to be 5 years the whole week. It just looks so weird to see him wearing that red Gold Coast Suns polo.
I'm so burned out that I'm going to take a couple months off and then take pretty much the exact same job in a slightly different location with maybe more obstacles. Okay. If maybe, you know what it might honestly be? It might be some of this, like, obviously he did everything he could at Richmond. Maybe he wants a real challenge instead of just coming into something where everything's great.
They clearly got a younger and deeper for their age list considering what they've put up in the VFL as well. They were minor premiers in the VFL, taking that on percentage over Werribee. So where this list lies going into next year in 2025 as well is going to be really interesting.
Greater Western Sydney, 25-12-162 defeated Essendon 6-6-36, or Jesse Hogan 9-1-55 defeated Essendon 6-6-36. What the fuck happened here?
Well, firstly, congratulations to Jesse Hogan on his career-high 9 goals. His best showing previously was a 7-goal game for the Demons back in 2016. Difference is they lost that game to the Saints.
If Jesse Hogan is hitting the easy shots, it's over. Because, we've said many times he's fucked up the easy ones and hit 50 meters out at a sharp angle, no problem.
It's like Charlie Dixon in that sense too. Dixon was like that, especially in 2021. But this was also the Giants' highest ever score. Their previous high was 160 against the Suns back in round 2 of 2017. It's also their greatest ever margin of victory at 126. Their previous high was also against the Suns. No, it was not the same game as the other one. That was the next year, 2018. And they raised their percentage 7 full points from this game as well, from 98.6 to 105.6. They went from normal body temperature to running a fever with a round to go.
Like a high-grade fever.
Yeah, like getting close to death. 108, you're dead, because you communists don't know Fahrenheit.
Yeah, look, you guys can make arguments about how the metric system is good with math and stuff, but think about it. 0 should be freezing, 100 should be hot. Doesn't that make sense?
I mean, things above 0 can easily freeze as well.
Yes, but 0 is really, really, really cold, and 100 is hot. Instead of 100 is everyone's dead. But our temperature scale is actually really good, and as stupid as the rest of the world isn't on it.
This was a nice early birthday present, though, for one Adam Kingsley, who turned 48 on Sunday.
Also, yet another great GWS banner. There are teams that have good social media. There are teams that have funny banners. I don't think there's any team that combines the two quite as well. It's been a long time. The Bombers have waited. Last time they won a final, we weren't even created. And they're going to add another year onto that. This was a disappointing thud for how to kind of go out. I mean, it was clear that Essendon were not one of the 8 best teams.
I think there's still mathematically a way for them to be in, but
yes, it would involve them winning this week, the Giants losing this week, and making up a shit ton of percentage, and to also pass the Bulldogs if the Bulldogs win.
So rely on Geelong winning as well then, really.
Basically, it would require a lot of games decided by at least 100 points. So it's almost impossible.
It's Essendon Dover.
It's like they'd have to win by enough time. There was definitely a unlikely scenario like this in the Hogwarts Quidditch competition at one time. And this is not a book.
No, Essendon's book has closed.
83-13 at halftime, 126-28 after 3. A week ago it talked about as poorly as the Giants had played against Port, how hard it is to really blow a team out of the water like this. I mean, you really got to pour it on for all 4 quarters. Also, I loved that the fourth quarter of this game turned into just funneling everything to Hogan to get him as many goals as possible.
And he was laboring through that fourth quarter. He was just winded, but they were trying to get him that 10th goal. They didn't get it. So instead, who brought up that high score for him? Toby McMullen. Game 2, first goal. I love how they subbed off Toby Green as well. It was a total victory cigar sub, but they had to maintain the 2 Toby quota, which is why McMullen was the sub.
It's too bad, because I like the idea of a triple Toby.
I mean, 3 Tobys scored this game for the Giants. That might be an AFL record for any club to have 3 Tobys scoring for him. Yeah, welcome back, Snooze and Binga. They were very much missed last week. They helped outpace the Bombers everywhere. So often the Giants forced Essendon to take on contests in their defensive 50, and Essendon's game is usually building uncontested out of defense, then usually allowing someone like Andrew McGrath to really... McGrath. We have a majority of Australian listeners.
If it's McGraw, it's McGraw, like Tug.
Or his son, Tim. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Tim McGraw's dad was a very good baseball pitcher. Closer.
There are a lot of name things that I can listen on, but no, that's McGrath.
Okay, but usually it's somebody like McGrath who really ends up with an important kick into the midfield, if not the forward half. After Essendon don't face much pressure, able to build their way. The Giants did not allow that, and that was why Essendon were really fucked from the beginning. They're a young enough team that they can keep up that pressure the whole way. But yeah, Bedford and Daniels being in, you wonder why they got flattened last week. They didn't have those 2 running on the flanks. They'd both been suspended from separate incidents in the Sydney Derby. I did call a late change for Essendon in this game. I said on the preview, Jai Caldwell was among the emergencies. If he's fit to go, there's no way he's the sub, so I saw him as a late change. And he was. Jake Stringer ended up being the sub for the first time since his debut over 10 years ago. Did not matter. By the point he came on, the Bombers were already struggling big time. It was 59-6 when he came on in the middle of the second quarter after Matt Guelphy did his hamstring.
Bit of a disappointing year for Guelphy, I would say. I really liked how we played last year. He had a couple of moments this season, but injuries set him back, and I think just got overshadowed by other forwards, which isn't entirely his fault.
Has only managed 13 games for the year, was out from rounds 3 to 10. I think the emergence of Archie Perkins this year is what really overshadowed him, as well as a more complete year for Jai Caldwell, especially in the forward third. Essendon were outdone in the center as well, Tom Green leading the charge there. He had 22 disposals and 5 clearances in the first half alone. Ended up with 39 disposals, 11 score involvements, 10 clearances, and a goal. Look, they were out everything. The Giants had the work rate from the beginning, and they pummeled them in every way possible. Stephen Canelio kicked 1-1 from 31 disposals, 10 score involvements, and 8 clearances. Well, that being Stephen Canelio and his eyebrow.
I missed that commercial. Can we replace Friday Night Footy with that?
He has at least one sentient eyebrow.
That was such a funny ad.
And I can't find it anywhere. I know.
Ooh, actually, I realized, because usually the old copies of games on Watch AFL, they don't have the commercials. We'd have to find something from 2021 Watch AFL that has the commercial.
Or like an old Fox Sports 1 broadcast from 2020 or 21. Harry Himmelberg came up late to kick a goal, but was great in defense throughout, taking some of the load off Sam Taylor, actually. Had 30 disposals, 9 intercepts, 8 marks, and 595 meters. Again, it is so huge that he is signed on for the long term for the Giants. There has been so much speculation about him, especially leaning toward Richmond. Josh Kelly, not Jake. He was playing against Jake. Don't forget that, Ethan. Behind from 30 disposals. Callan Ward and Lockie Whitfield also got 30. Ward with 10 scored involvements, 7 marks, 3 goal assists, and 575 meters. He's coming up on his 200th game as a Giant. Lachie Whitfield also at 7 marks and 3 goal assists, 11 scored involvements. Lachie Ash a goal from 25 disposals, 9 scored involvements, 530 meters gained. More complete year out of Ash. We'd seen him mostly as a tagger before this year. He's gotten a chance to really play as a freer halfback under Adam Kingsley, and that's really worked.
Also, haven't they had other guys tag? Like, what, Finn Callahan's done some tagging?
Callahan's more of a winger at times as well. I mean, they haven't been nearly as much of a tagging team in general this year, because you've seen Lachie Ash and the now retired Matt DeBoer do that in the past. Also in defense, Connor Iden and Harry Perryman each had 24 disposals and 7 marks. Isaac Cumming, 22 and 9 score involvements. And again, Jesse Hogan, 9 goals won from 24 disposals and 17 marks. A career game at age 28 when his club desperately needed a percentage boost.
Giants with 117 additional disposals, only 29 more inside 50, 70-41, but efficiency 57.1 to 34.1. They won clearances by 11 because they were 29-16 on stoppage clearances. They recorded 48 more marks, including a 19-7 edge inside 50. Andrew McGrath led the Bombers with 32 disposals. Nick Hind had 28. He also had 9 intercepts, gained 547 meters. Zach Merritt behind, 27 disposals, 7 clearances. Darcy Parrish, 25 disposals, 7 tackles, 508 meters. Not Dead Ben Hodge, 19 disposals, 7 tackles.
Really like this full year out of Not Dead Ben or the Goblin or whatever you call him.
We're still sticking with Not Dead Ben.
Have him on the inside, playing as somewhat of a center half forward at times on the forward half side of bounces. Have him working alongside Jai Caldwell. Have Nick Martin on the outside. I like that idea for Essendon.
One other GWS news thing. Phil Davis announced his retirement on Monday. Unfortunately, we didn't really get to see any of them this year, injury-wise. Their defense, for the most part, has still been really strong, especially over the last couple of months.
Really, since Sam Taylor came back in recovering from his hamstring.
I know the younger players have really appreciated learning from him, including Milkman Jason Gilby. And considering his TV experience already, I look forward to seeing more of Phil Davis in media.
Yeah, I expect him to be on more New South Wales broadcasts that Seven has. He played 192 games, 18 with the Crows in his first 2 years before coming over to the Giants. Playing 174 there, was an inaugural co-captain, serving for 8 years. He was actually born in Canberra and lived there until age 14 when his family moved to South Australia. Unfortunately, from the start of 2020, he only managed 26 games because of hamstring and ankle injuries. One of the last real memories I have of him was limiting Buddy to 1 goal in that 2022 Sydney Derby played at Stadium Australia. Even though the Giants lost that game, that was something that stood out. St Kilda, 12-16-88, defeating Geelong 8-7-55. We called how this game would be won. St Kilda with the pace, the play through the middle, Geelong's defensive woes continuing from the previous week, Jake Kolajashny, and the inclusion Jed Buse not having good games. The speed from the Saints all over was pretty ridiculous. Even after Seb Ross was subbed out, Mason Wood and Brad Crouch took over there, and Jack Higgins inside 50 as well. And all of it adds up to, as we said earlier, the Cats missing out on finals for just the second time in the past 17 years, and the first time since 2015. Hey, they got another flag out of it. They'd had 4 since the last 2 times they missed finals.
I'll take 2 flags for every 1 time missing the 8. But yeah, Brad Crouch and Mason Wood way faster than any Cats midfielder. Kolajashny, unplayable. Buse, maybe you can credit some of it to it being his first game at AFL level in a couple months. He was bad too.
I think there'll be some fair judgment of him after the finale against the Dogs.
Isaac Smith looks like he's ready to retire. He was kind of just going through the motions. Jack Steele didn't get a ton of the ball at times in this game. He did end up with his 27 disposals, but there were a few moments where he was super noticeable and the whole team benefited from his presence. Really liked him. The lack of a matchup for Rowan Marshall was on display. After watching Toby Conway's VFL highlights from this week, it would have made more sense just to throw him in. Shannon Neal could be a good ruckman. Just, he's had 4 games of experience at the position, and it showed. And then it looked like injuries were going to pile up for both teams. So last week against Collingwood, Both teams had made their sub by early second quarter, which was the fastest this year. This time, both teams made them by the start of the second quarter. Brandon Parfit came in for a sub for Radagalea midway through the first. Radagalea did his hamstring again after getting absolutely pumped by Max King. That was not a good matchup for him. That needed to change.
I called that one be a good matchup, and I think we have seen the last of him in hoops. I can see him moving on to some place like Port, like we thought last year.
If Port's offering him 5 years, like was discussed in that Twitter space I was in the other night, it's like, all right, fine. I'd like to keep him around. I think he can be a really good player. But if someone's offering him 5 years, just like, all right, clearly you want him more than we do. Like, I'm not going to complain. It looked like the Saints were the ones who were going to have to deal with a bunch more injuries because you had, at one point, Cooper Sharman going down. Bradley Hill was limping. He ended up staying in the game and actually played quite well. But it ended up being Brad Close basically missing the entire second half with an ankle injury,
which may finish his season off.
And someone else was down at one point, too. Tyson Stengel as well was down at one point. So you were playing through stretches with only 20 guys. Like, it's clear that this lineup needs to look very different than the round 1 2024 lineup. If Mitch Duncan plays on to next year, he was suspended for a dangerous tackle, by the way, where he tackled Jack Higgins after a whistle. I thought this was ridiculously soft. I think the writing's on the wall for Zach Tuohy. I don't know if it is for Duncan. I could see him getting another year, but the hierarchy would need to have him as like the 4th or 5th best midfielder. To be a top team, you're going to need Tom Atkins to be like your 3rd best midfielder, and then have 2 guys in front of him, and then Mitch Duncan as like that 4th or 5th guy. Then you've got a hell of a midfield.
So like Tanner Bruin and I wouldn't say Jack Bowes because I like him a little bit off those contests, but someone.
I can't get a great read on. People that know more than I do seem to think he's going to be a really strong player. And noting that, he had been a forward and he's just really getting comfortable as a midfielder, that's encouraging. I watched Bowes pretty closely this week because there are times when I haven't been impressed with him, but it became clear that when he gets the ball, really good things happen. I would love to find a way to work him into a spot where he's getting like 20 touches a game because he doesn't turn it over much. He finds guys in tight windows. He's got some real skill. But yeah, this was not a premiership midfield. This was not a premiership defense, especially. Hopefully Sam DeConing with a full season and no more face injuries can get back to what he was last year.
No more Batman or Rip Hamilton.
And yeah, hopefully, as much as I defended Jake Kolajashny last year, I'm not doing that now. And I think it's probably time to move on from him. I mean, this was like almost as bad as 2021 Lockie Henderson.
Yikes.
Well, yeah, this game was never that close. Couple stretches where, got it down to 2 goals early in the third on a couple of occasions, but the Saints got the next one when they needed it and just pulled away. And they were clearly the better team. Like, I'm not scarred for life from this. I won't remember much of this game, which is good. Normally, the games that cost your team a playoff spot are really painful and really easy to remember. And this one will just be like, yeah, they got beat. There were too many injuries, and the guys that were available weren't that good.
But Brian Myers got his 40th assist.
And this is 41st.
Yeah, I was going to say, got his 41st. So, the home and away assist record is his, and he did it in 22 games, so it's legitimate, Jason Ackermanis.
What was his total that year? Ackermanis, he got I think it was 44 or 46?
44. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, it's sad. Assuming Jeremy Cameron doesn't play this week against the Dogs because he's going in for shoulder surgery, most likely. May have to do it to some different guys. I still think it can be done. I really hope it can be done.
Would be incredible if it could be done.
As I've said, it's going to be like the end of an NHL season where you find out, oh, this guy was playing through a separated shoulder. This guy had one of his toes cut off and just played through it.
Joe Thornton played through a bum ACL all year.
This guy played through a severed artery. This guy lost circulation to one of his testicles. I think we're going to find that out. My prediction, we're going to find out DeConing wasn't right. We're going to find out Stengel wasn't right. I think we've already found out that Jeremy Cameron wasn't right. But congrats to the Saints on proving us wrong once again.
Congrats to Matthias Filippo as well. We've been calling him out a decent amount. Yes, he's a first-year guy.
He didn't do a ton in this game.
He had that one great sequence, though, where it was the goal that I feel like may have iced it.
Oh, no, the game was out of reach by that point anyway, but he did a nice job handballing out of a tackle to set up a Higgins goal.
But he also had one of his own where he started on half back, making a contest there and then ended up going forward and getting the goal.
But this is a team that, if you can get the center clearances and win aerial contests like they did, I think they can actually do pretty well in finals. I would probably give them the lowest odds of any of the remaining teams to win the whole thing. But the ability to operate with speed when you need to, mixed with being able to win aerial contests,
and also knowing how to lock down defensively because Ross Lyon is your coach.
Yeah, this team can do something. This team can do some real damage. And
if only it didn't take, 2 months of Ross Ball to remember, oh, wait, this list doesn't have to play like this.
just imagine if they had added anything in the trade period.
Hey, they added Zane Cordy. And honestly, Cordy with a damn good game playing back in defense this week where he definitely belongs more than in the forward 50. He had 10 intercepts and 5 intercept marks. He was really the main support for Cal Wilkie this week, and Wilkie had 21 disposals and 14 marks. Naziah Wangadi-Millero working out of defense, 22 and 9 marks. Marcus Windhager also had 22. He had 11 marks. We are very glad that he got more time in as the year progressed. Still want him to play as more of a tagger at times. Wasn't needed in this game, but there are times this year where he really could have been useful for him.
I got an idea. Tag the tagger. So say they're playing Hawthorne, have him tag Finn McGinnis, and then the Hawks have someone tag him, and it just turns into like a whole tagging conga line.
Footy, footy, footy. Mason Wood behind for 23 disposals and 11 marks. God damn, he's fast. Rowan Marshall kicked 1-1 from 28 hitouts, 24 disposals and 10 marks. He was the right guy to captain this week. Jack Steele, 27 and 7 tackles. Also in the goddamn he's fast group. Really, all 3 of these other guys that were at the top of their disposal count. Brad Krause with 29, 16 contested possessions and 11 clearances. Has elevated his midfield work a lot this year. Brad Hill behind from 31 and 13 marks. Glad he was able to play through that injury. Still a lot to give, even at age 30. And Jack Sinclair, 38 disposals, 11 score involvements, 10 marks, 547 meters. Having him play more freely as opposed to keeping him more in the half back, allowing him to venture up to the wing into the forward half has been one of the biggest and most positive changes for the Saints throughout this season.
Team stats for this game, Saints with 78 more disposals, 18 more inside 50s, free kicks 20-5. The umpiring in this game was shit. The Saints should have doubled in free kicks, not quadrupled. There were a couple of holding the balls that weren't called and a couple of pushing the backs that were just insane. It would not have changed the outcome, but it was frustrating. Hitouts 31-14 in favor of the Saints. They play a lot of games with really low number of hitouts altogether, just the way they flow. And then on clearances, 33-21, 15-8 from center. When this Geelong team is successful, they're winning center clearances. I think that's where you really feel Cam Guthrie's absence, as bad as he had been a couple weeks before he had gotten hurt. Saints with 32 more marks, including 20-9 inside 50. Weird thing is they only lead 38 tackles, but that's also a side of just how much more they had the ball. Cats, 52 tackles. Tom Stewart, despite St. Kilda's efforts to kind of shut him down like they did to James Sicily, 30 disposals, 13 marks, 597 meters. Mitch Duncan, a goal off 27 disposals. Zach Toohey kind of spent some time at half forward, which was weird. He had a goal, 25 disposals, 8 marks. Tom Atkins, I thought, was probably best on ground for the Cats with a goal off 23 disposals, 14 contested possessions, and 9 tackles. Zach Guthrie, 2 straight weeks he kicked a goal and they lost. 21 disposals, 10 marks. He's quietly ascended the ranks and just become a really smooth defender. He did have a turnover that gave up a late goal once the game was out of reach, but those mistakes have been so minimal and his instincts have been so good that I'm really pleased with him. I think entering next year, you want your defense, the hierarchy to be number 1, Tom Stewart, 2A and 2B, DeConing and Jack Henry, and then you put Guthrie past that, and then you just find some guys that suck less than College Ashley and Buse, and you've got yourself a premiership defense. Ryan, in addition to breaking that record with his 2 assists, 9 score involvements, 21 disposals in the behind. Jack Bowes kicked a behind. He had 18 disposals, 9 marks, 500 meters. And Mark O'Connor, 18 disposals and 8 marks.
Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for podcasters. Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed. It's so easy you can edit it while drunk. And Spotify for podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do. Best of all, it's completely free. Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
Just a reminder that we are on Twitter. I don't care what it's called now. And
I'm not even addressing that. I've deliberately not addressed it.
oh, it's to the point that I made a shortcut for it and still have the old Twitter logo on there. So we're on Twitter and YouTube at Americans Footy. You can see a bit more footy content on YouTube, and I'll definitely expand on that during the off season. Our personal handles, Benjamin HK01 and
Castle Media. Brian Harambe's on Instagram at @catnamedbrian. We're going to do something a little different here real quick called Around the State Leagues, where we talk about things that happened in the state league.
Yeah, a couple interesting things. No, the Eagles did not win in the Waffle. That just doesn't happen. They lost to East Perth. Had that happened, I mean, we would have mentioned it here, but there were a couple things that we were following this past week. Firstly, just because Coburg, we have the personal connection to that as well, with their song being based on California Here I Come, which was written by a cousin of one of our great-grandparents.
The issue with that song is they don't even know what team they are unless their coaches tell them. That's a really bad sign.
Oh yes, Coburg will be there to lose every single game in the season. They ended winless. They lost to Essendon.
They couldn't even beat the fucking Ball Ants. They didn't get absolutely blasted most weeks as badly as the Ants did, right?
It still got pretty bad enough.
I don't think we were seeing that sort of score every week. The percentage was actually significantly better than the Ants, even though the Ants went 2-16. Coburg went 0-18 at 55.8. What was the Ants' percentage?
I'm gonna guess 39.2.
40.4.
And remember, they lost one of their best goal kickers during the season too when Brandon Ryan got drafted mid-season by the Hawks. So that didn't help. The other thing that happened was in the Sandful, specifically on Saturday.
Yes, South Adelaide 15-7-97, Port Adelaide 14-13-97, and West Adelaide 10-16-76, Norwood 11-10-76. So 2 draws in a league of 10 teams.
On the same day. What are the odds of that? I mean, I don't even know the last time there were 2 draws in the AFL on the same day, let alone in the same round. I might need to get Swamp on that for us.
I don't know. I dig it, though. I think it's fun.
Draws are fun. You know what isn't fun? How about your season getting ended by a missed goal call? Adelaide Crows, 10-13-73, defeated by a number of things that were outside their control, including the Sydney Swans, 11-8-74. Ben Keys kicked what should have been the winning goal with 1:11 left.
Or at least a go-ahead goal. Who knows what happens from there?
Yeah, but the Swans controlled from there. The Crows never even got it into the forward half again. There's no way that this could have been overturned because it wasn't the last kick. Siren Gate back in, I think it was 2006, with the Saints and Freo out in Launceston, there was a definitive ending to the game that should have come before. You can't make that argument in this case, and it's just even more heartbreak for the Crows, who, once again, lose all these heartbreakers. I can count 7 of them on the year now, where poor accuracy in at least one quarter let them down. The difference the past 2 weeks is that they trailed for most of the games anyway. They nearly came back from a 44-point deficit from late in the second quarter. They were down 42 at halftime, 42 at three-quarter time, but they kicked 4 goals, 8 in the fourth quarter. Tex Walker and Darcy Fogarty were not marking and finishing nearly as well. A lot of opportunities went for rushed behinds. At the same time, it had to be the Crows of all teams.
Let's talk for a moment about the call itself. My issue isn't the call. It's that there was no review. Even if you had said, inconclusive evidence, umpire's call, I could have lived with that, even if it was the wrong call. The first couple angles I saw did make it look like it might have ticked off the post, but particularly the padding. It's the padding at the last possible moment before it could have drifted behind it.
It seems like the argument for a lot of people was that, why might the goal umpire have thought it was a behind? Maybe because they heard the padding getting hit and it was actually Callum Mills' hand.
Yeah, but how do you not
You are the only person in the entire stadium who thinks that it's a behind.
There were a couple of Swans players that were signaling behind right away, I think. Right? Or no? Maybe I'm thinking of the week earlier with Carlton and Melbourne.
Well, regardless, 44,817 fans can't be wrong.
And they can be.
No, if they're Collingwood fans calling ball, yeah, they can be.
By the way, great turnout. The hill was packed, and that crowd nearly helped the Crows rally all the way back. But yeah, my issue is, again, how do you not at least take a look? We have the technology to do this, even if it's somewhat crappy camera angles and camera quality and all this. Like, first off, if, we have the ability to track how far guys are running and stuff, shouldn't we be able to put like a little chip or sensor inside the game balls that can tell you if they hit the post? Because like the technology now is just like, did something touch the post? I mean, it'd be easy enough to fuck with that as an opposing player, just, touch the post.
As Callum Mills did.
I don't think that was his intent. Well, it's like something that now you could totally do intentionally now that we're aware of this.
Yeah. I mean, putting a little chip in there won't change the mass or the composition of the share nearly enough to affect anything. You see it. Do they have a chip in NFL balls? Or I forget.
I don't know. There are, I'm sure, other ways to do this as well, but this shouldn't be happening.
Whether it's better camera systems or tracker inside the ball, there are ways for this to be fixed. And undoubtedly, things will change before next season. I see that as a given.
Oh yeah, after something like this, it gets fixed. It's a shame that it came to this.
And when the outgoing CEO is a Crows fan,
you can't blame him for like a homer thing there, at least.
But thinking about the rest of the game, Matthew Nicks is spot on. He said in his post-game presser, regardless of what else happened, we lost this game in quarters 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, it was 59-27 at half, I believe?
59-27 is right.
How did they get out to that lead? Obviously, I was watching Geelong at this time.
Well, the Swans' pressure gave them a lot of control in the first half. They were dominating contests, dominating clearances. They weren't allowing the Crows forwards to run, and that they got rebounds really easily. But so much of this first half was the Swans pressured and the Crows did not stand up to it. Also, Nick Blakey rose to the milestone occasion for him. This was his 100th game and one of his most visible, between marking and winning contests in his defense and then carrying out. When Blakey ended up carrying out through the middle, had that 2-bounce run before hitting Logan McDonald, who then fired through an open goal square from just inside 50. I thought that was it right then and there. That was with just over 5 minutes left in the third quarter to restore a 26-point lead.
Also, you'll never believe this, but when the Crows had a super dominant quarter, they didn't kick straight. In that fourth quarter, they were 4-8. Should have been 5-7. They were 4-8. It seemed like in what ended up being a 32-1 fourth quarter. And again, who knows? Maybe the Swans come back down and score. I don't think they do, but you leave the possibilities out there, and unfortunately, we'll never know. But it seemed like the Swans got into try not to lose mode a bit too early, something that I've noticed other teams have done, like the Lions a week earlier, also against the Crows.
Is it something about playing the Crows?
I don't think so, because like in the Lions case, at least, that's a problem that they've had many times against other teams as well.
It's funny that it happened to the Crows 2 weeks in a row, where this is another way for them to lose in heartbreaking close fashion. You had those 5 games earlier on in the season where they had control of the game, and yet they go back and are ruining poor accuracy in 1 or 2 quarters.
This team could be 16-6 right now.
And they're still on the younger side. Isaac Reichen was the biggest positive for this, coming back in and playing really cleanly despite the wet conditions, had one of the best goals of the round as well. This is not the ceiling for the Crows. Obviously, they'll be able to learn from that first half a lot. I also just wish Matthew Nicks had been able to win it over his old club as well, because that would have been a great way to most likely cement your place in the finals. Yeah, you had some coaches' connections to the opposite sides of this game, because Matthew Nicks was a Swan himself throughout his playing career, and of course one of the Swans' assistants is former Crows head coach Don Pike.
I'm going to get out ahead of this now. My prediction for the 2024 Crows, they have a better record than this year, no duh, but they have a lower percentage, because I think the overall product might not be quite as good as it's been this year, because even with all the defensive injuries, like they played really well. Their percentage is at 115, could boost next week against the Eagles. I think next year, they'll have a similar, if not lower percentage, but obviously, they'll be better in close games. That's one of those things that we've seen, including with their neighbors, doesn't usually stick year to year. And if the pendulum swings the other way, they'll be just fine. It's just,
I want to see now, once the home and away season's done, do they have the highest ever percentage for their ladder spot?
I would think that's going to be quite possible.
Well, it depends on how West Coast do in another finale against the Crows.
And what happened, they could still theoretically finish as high as 9th.
Would require...
Actually, no, they can't finish it. Sorry, I think 10th is the highest they could go.
Even with the Cats and Bulldogs draw.
Yeah, 10th is the highest they could physically go. But
how funny would a Cats and Bulldogs draw be?
It would be pretty entertaining.
A draw to keep the Dogs out of finals would be, honestly, pretty darn delicious.
That said, if you were to measure the Crows up against all the other potential finalists, I would not put much on them to make a deep run simply because they've only shown the ability to do this at home. That's something that obviously would hold them back in this case. But yeah, despite their record being around where you thought it would be, they've obviously exceeded expectations. It's just, you turn around 2 of those games of the 6 that they've lost that they've had a shot at. It's not like they would have even needed to win half of them.
Unsurprisingly, the Swans were led by Errol Golden, 30 disposals, 16 contested possessions, at 681 meters, providing pressure and then working through it really well. Chad Warner behind from 25 disposals at 539 meters. Ollie Flarge, 21 and 12 contested possessions. Isaac Heaney had 13 contested possessions out of his 18 disposals and kicked 3 goals, 1. Golden is the most likely Brownlow candidate out of these Swans, but Isaac Heaney can be just as scary. James Rowbottom with 15 disposals and 8 tackles. That's a very James Rowbottom game. He ended up, I think, getting Luke Pedler holding the ball at one point. Was just like, fuck yes, I love this matchup.
I feel like the more typical Rowbottom game is like 17 or 18 disposals, but still pretty accurate.
The Crows were plus 32 on hitouts. They more than doubled up the Swans, 61 to 29, with Riley O'Brien generating 49 of those. But the Swans don't need a ruck to win. And I mean, Tom Hickey was in there, but doesn't need to be a strength of theirs, clearly. They're on a 6-game heater. They have clinched the 8. Well, they hadn't yet on Saturday night. More about how they did that, or really how it was given to them in just a bit.
Rory Laird behind 31 disposals, 9 clearances, 8 tackles. Jake Soligo, he's re-upped his stock after struggling for a bit a few weeks back. 28 disposals, 541 meters. Matt Crouch, a goal, 26 disposals. Brody Smith, 25 disposals, 10 intercepts, 7 marks, 666 meters gained. Jordan Dawson, 2 behinds, 19 disposals, 8 tackles. And Shane McAdam, a goal and 7 tackles.
Got bumped in the head by Tom McCartan as McAdam was going low for the ball. But also, I'm surprised McAdam wasn't even taken off for an HIA and stayed on to even kick that. So is it something about South Australian teams?
Because, yeah, it was announced he's going to miss this week, isn't he?
Yeah, it was a facial injury, though.
Oh, okay.
Not concussion. Well, he may have one, but that's not the reason they...
Yeah, like a cheekbone thing. That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, just remember, Lockie Jones was subbed out with an unrelated migraine.
Western Bulldogs, 12-13-85, defeated by West Coast, 14-8-92. This is when I'm really sad that Urinating Tree doesn't make footy videos, because like his brand of humor, just absolutely roasting the Dogs, would be so good right now.
And Eagles fans are very ambivalent about this result.
Here's the thing. I like the Bulldogs. They seem to have a very well-liked fan base. They seem like friendly people.
We like a couple Bulldogs fans from the U.S. that we know.
They've got a likable group of players. But it's really hard not to laugh at them when they piss away this sort of talent. I mean, Marcus Bontempelli is probably the best player in the entire sport. The sort of guy who should get his number retired.
In a sport where that doesn't happen.
You have Jack McRae, you have Tom Liberatore, you have Adam Treloar, you have maybe the best ruckman in Tim English.
You've got Ed Richards emerging as an elite back.
And you can't beat this team? A team that lost by 100 in their home derby.
They've lost by triple digits 5 times this year. I don't fucking care that you're without Tom Liberatore.
Yeah, that's nowhere near enough of an excuse.
There is no excuse.
This is the sort of thing that unless you, A, win next week, B, get a GWS loss next week, and C, win 2 finals. This requires like massive changes. People need to lose their jobs.
Or D, Luke Beveridge has incriminating photos of the board.
Well, then other coaches need to lose their jobs. People on the board need to lose their jobs.
Hey, all I care about is don't touch Gary Zimmerman's job.
Yes.
He's great. Dr. Zimmerman and his luxurious hair all over his head and face, do not touch him.
You sound like you want to touch him. Take us through the actual game, because first off, we watched this in a few different capacities.
Yeah, we were watching this first actually at Buzzworks in San Francisco, a bar there. It's the post-game hangout of the Golden Gate Roos in the USAFL. They always invite their opponents out for beers after the game. Seems like just a thing that happens in the league. They were playing the LA Dragons and San Diego Lions this past weekend, and we were mostly over there to meet up with one of the Dragons players who's in our U.S. footy circle in our fantasy league, that being Rick Shaibani, a Giants fan. Great to finally meet him. But yeah, we stuck around at Buzzworks to watch the first half. They put it on the big screens there, because there's like 9 screens actually that make it up, from a bit past the midway point of the first quarter. Then we decided to bounce after halftime.
I dropped Benjamin off and then went to Safeway to go pick up some food,
including pies.
Yeah, I hadn't had proper pie in a few months, so
unfortunately we don't have 4 and 20 here.
Yeah, if we did, I would absolutely support the sponsors, support the brand. Anyway, I get home and there's about 3 minutes left in the game. Benjamin got to watch the second half from here. I know you've since gone back and watched the whole thing, but
I've watched it again. Yeah, like doing a real like Eagle the replay.
Anyway, let's talk me through the actual game.
So honestly, the way this game started, I was really scared, because we've seen what can happen when the Eagles kick the first 2 goals.
Yeah, even when they led, 33-7 late in the first quarter, it's all like, all right, it's the first quarter. We saw North do a similar thing against the D's a couple weeks ago. The talent will rise. And when the Dogs got the last 2 goals of the first quarter, it's like, all right, here we go.
They missed right on the quarter time siren, but the Dogs had gotten repeat entries. It was a matter of their conversion rate being low. I thought things were going to be all right for them, obviously. How about Oscar Allen, though? 2 goals in the first quarter. The second one was a snap. It was his second snap goal of the year. That was his 48th goal of the season, and he has 2 snaps. We saw the big problem, though, for the Bulldogs early. That problem's name was Tim Kelly. Kelly with 13 disposals, 9 of them uncontested in the first quarter. For some reason, the Bulldogs decided not to have somebody running with Tim Kelly as part of their game plan, and because it wasn't part of their game plan, it just never happened, because Luke Beveridge doesn't believe in in-game adjustments. So even when the Bulldogs were able to bring things closer to an 11-point halftime deficit and a 9-point lead at 3-quarter time, Kelly was still racking up disposals and uncontested possessions and score involvements and assists as well. 5 goal assists in a game. He did his best Brian Myers impersonation with that. Going back on replay, I noticed how poor a lot of the Dogs' goal kicking was. They had a lot of chances to score from set shots in really the later portion of the second quarter. They had won a lot of contests leading up to them, and it remained a conversion issue. I noticed looking at, the X score chart and things like that, when they were outside 30 meters and from angles any harsher than 15 degrees, their shots were extremely unreliable, whether they were in play or set shots. And that's not something you'd expect from any team, let alone a group where Aaron Naughton and Jamar Ugle-Hagan entered the game having combined for, I believe, 73 goals on the year. Then into the second half, the Bulldogs continued to, no pun intended, pounce. That's how I wrote it in the notes. It was just like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But ended up punishing missed Eagles disposals, especially handballs, and running them back and rebounding. When this game was played at speed, the Bulldogs were able to take advantage because they were the cleaner team. And that often comes with experience, so that makes sense. It was how the Bulldogs were able to take the lead in the third quarter. Jamar Ugle-Hagan ended up getting them the lead on a snap. After Jamie Cripps kicked the first goal of the third quarter, the Dogs kicked the next 4 goals and 5 in the next 6. That other Eagles goal was Oscar Allen with another in-play goal. This one check side. Like, who is this guy? Hardly ever kicks goals from in-play, and in the same game has a snap and a check side goal.
But it wasn't a Chinana, was it?
I don't think it qualified as a real Chinana. Nah, Isaac Rankins, that was a Chinana. And it may have even been said on the broadcast. But the Dogs,
All I heard was Rankenstein.
that too. I think it was like when they were showing the replays right after that Trinano was mentioned. May have been Mark Rachuda who said it. But the Dogs were punishing well. They were outnumbering and winning ground balls in their forward 50. Marcus Bontempelli went off in the third. He had 7 clearances in the third. The West Coast Eagles had 7 clearances in the third. And then one of the big things that helped turn the tide of the fourth quarter was the Eagles sub. In his 6th game, 4 of which I believe had been as the sub, Zayd fucking True. Great as a midfield support, got some really important touches, had a goal for himself. After Jamie Cripps gave the Eagles the lead with his 3rd goal, True got the next one. And then off the next center clearance, True had this tap to set up Tim Kelly to feed Cripps for his 4th. So all of a sudden, it looks like Jamie Cripps is going to grant his old team St. Kilda a final spot. He ended up doing that, and he ended up scoring a 5th as well, which is insane enough. That ties his career high. Jamie Cripps, where have you been? Well, he'd been injured. He had his ankle broken in the first Western Derby, and I mostly noticed him this year for being a pressure leader, but his goal-kicking ability was never forgotten.
I just want to mention, you talked about Zane True. Maybe by volume of Gatorade or Powerade or whatever, the biggest bath anyone's gotten for a first win.
It was quite the golden shower. A couple misses from Jabari Ugle-Hagan proved really costly. There was one where it seemed like he had the distance, but just set it up short by the goal square, and clearly his teammates were surprised because nobody put on a lead.
So he wasn't going the distance?
He was not going for speed.
Is she all alone in her time of need?
Thank you, Cake. Dogs weren't able to convert late until Cody Waitman took a mark and quickly snapped, but that was already inside the final 90 seconds of clock time, and with it still being a 2-goal margin. And Jeremy McGovern stood up late. He'd stood up all game. He'd crashed a contest earlier with Ugle-Hagan that made me think, he might be going out with a shoulder injury. No, came back in and was the best defender in the last 3 quarters, was able to take on the matchup with Aaron Naughton, and then had the last huge spoil and the last intercept mark as well. Was really fitting. Holy shit, the West Coast Eagles. And we talked about the Adelaide Crows losing tight games. Maybe that's taken the spotlight off the Bulldogs' struggles. In games decided by 14 points or fewer this year, the Western Bulldogs are 1-7.
The one being against Richmond, of course. Back when that was Richmond's thing.
I love what Adam Simpson said in the post-game interview with Dicko. We tried to tank that for the last 3 minutes. It didn't work.
It was funny that, the day after, the Eagles board has an informal meeting at one of their board members' houses.
Look, he's probably still getting the sack. I just hope that they do.
Now I feel bad.
No, I hope that they do it the right way and announce it during the week, but they fucking won't.
Yeah, he deserves, especially because this coming week, you're giving send-offs to Nick Natanui, Luke Shuey, Shannon Hearn.
The Premiership core, even though Nick Nat didn't play in that. And
let him be a part of that walk-off into the sunset.
Let the Premiership coach get the praise he deserves for that era as well. But, it's not going to happen.
I don't know. I hope, if they do, I really hope he gets a chance to have that.
I hope that the players just end up, let him walk through or something.
Yeah, cheer him off.
Fuck it, Shuey and Bunga cheer him off as they walk off. Because, the retiring players usually walk off on their own. We saw that the past week with Richmond and North. I love, by the way, that they had that while the Richmond players were walking off, it was to Mr. Brightside.
Yes,
I forget who tweeted it. May have been Shea Maxey guy, asking, does Brandon Flowers know how important he is to the Richmond Football Club?
Probably not, but I don't know. Maybe, since they performed there, I could see it.
Look, they had Jack Revolt on stage. They better know. I love also that he just didn't even change out of his jumper for that. Didn't change out of any part of his uniform. Does Tim Kelly get the 3 votes for this game, Ethan?
He might. It's between him and Bond.
This could be a game that really puts a damper in Bond's Brownlow hopes. Because there's a case for a couple other Eagles to get votes as well, those being Allen and Cripps. If you kick a bag, you're probably getting at least 1 vote.
The Brownlow predictor from this week has him getting 2. It has, we've got some fun heading into the final week, which, I don't think this is an exact science, but the Brownlow predictor has Dacos 30, Neil 29, Bond, Butters, and Taranto all at 27.
But Kelly kicked it behind from 32 disposals, 12 score involvements, 8 clearances, and 5 goal assists. How was stopping him not more of a focus for the Bulldogs? They had Bailey Smith and Adam Treloar on him at times at the initial stoppage, but nobody was running with him. Treloar seemed like the obvious candidate there because of his motor, but nothing was done. That could have been a way to put Jack McRae more in the game before McRae went down. There was no official injury for him, but got in a knock right before he was subbed off in the fourth quarter. It baffles me how nobody was going with Tim Kelly the whole way. Liam Duggan with 25 disposals and 8 marks. Didn't think it was his cleanest game, but racked up the totals. Andrew Gaff with 23. Stan Petrevsky-Seton had a nice game. Got involved with it a decent amount. Going kind of the edge of the forward 50 and into it at times. Behind from 16 disposals and 7 tackles. I'm hoping he can stay healthy next year. In terms of the defenders, Jeremy McGovern and Alex Witherden with 22 disposals each. McGovern with 9 marks and 9 intercept possessions. Josh Rothen with 9 marks as well and 15 disposals. One of his cleaner games. Had a rough play early on where he prevented Tom Cole from marking, but otherwise, maybe his best defensive outing of the season. And I have not been super high on him. He's been a free kick machine at times.
You don't have to make the, thank you for helping us win this game, not you meme.
No, this was a team win. And then in terms of the goal kickers, Oscar Allen, 3-3 from 18 disposals and 9 marks. The fact that only one of those goals was a set shot goal is still pretty crazy. And Jamie Cripps, 5 goals straight, 17 disposals, 8 tackles, a peak game from him, and his old team, the Saints, are in the finals because of it. Saints socials jumped on him right away, posting old stuff of Jamie playing with the Saints for those couple years. 2011 and 12, I believe. This is his 11th year with the Eagles.
I realized he really couldn't play for the Swans. Crips and Bloods don't mix.
You wonder why he wanted to trade from a team that wears red to one that wears blue.
Eagles with 17 more marks and a little bit more efficient inside 50, 54% to 47.2.
Again, I think a lot of that comes from the early struggles that the Bulldogs had with missing their connections in the first half and then their inaccurate kicking.
On the Bulldog side, Marcus Bonampelli, if they win, he's obviously in the 3 votes. A goal, 32 disposals, 21 contested possessions, 12 clearances, 10 score involvements, and Octopus 602 meters gained. Adam Treloar, a goal, 2 behinds, 32 disposals, 14 tackles, 9 score involvements. Bailey Dale a behind and 25 disposals, 515 meters. Caleb Daniel also at 25. Ed Richards, 23 disposals, 11 intercepts, 537 meters. Tim English, a goal. He was a plumber, if we're borrowing the term from the Mason Cox show. 51 hitouts. You get why he's a plumber?
Yeah, because he's got a lot of taps that he's dealing with.
Yep. 21 disposals and 9 marks. Bailey Smith, 21 disposals. Alex Keith, 17 disposals, 11 marks. And Liam Jones, 11 intercepts.
Keith drew the assignment on Allen. He's more the one-on-one defender. Liam Jones was forced to play on Jack Darling a decent amount. And Jones is not a good one-on-one defender. You keep him as that loose fullback, that key defender position, he can thrive there. But David King came with the stats as he always does. Of the 100 players of the AFL with the most defensive one-on-ones, entering this game, Liam Jones was ranked 64th in winning those one-on-ones and 90th in intercepts. You have a body on him, you limit him so much, and Jack Darling did a great job on that and took a pretty impressive mark against him as well. Jones was holding his jumper around the right shoulder and kind of armbarring him as well, and Darling brought in a one-handed mark with his left and finished with a set shot.
Liam Jones is best when he's doing some of the Darcy Moore type stuff where he's roving instead of being glued to one guy. If he can do that around the 20 to 30 meters from the goalpost, that's when he's at his best. Melbourne, 39-87, defeating Hawthorn 9-6-60. Tight game through the first half, 41-39 Demons. They pulled away gradually with a 4-2 third quarter to go up 13. Ended up kicking 3-1 in the last term, 27-point win.
Their top 4 position is guaranteed. The top 4 is guaranteed.
The biggest thing in this game was that Hawthorn didn't have Jai Newcomb. He was laid out with a hamstring injury. Henry Hustwaite, 2022 number 37 overall pick, debuted and looked really solid. You got to find a way to keep him in the lineup, but Newcomb was missed. While Finn McGuinness did an excellent job shutting Clayton Oliver down.
And pissing off Simon Goodwin.
Yeah, not having Newcomb meant that Petrarca and Jack Viney were able to do their thing.
Petrarca, Viney, easier time for Angus Brayshaw as well. Just Will Day having to carry too much of the midfield.
But McGuinness held Oliver to, I think it was 14 disposals, and he ended his 53-game streak of at least 5 clearances.
McGinnis ended up with 13 disposals of his own. Goody was talking about how he's not a player that wants the ball. I mean, his goal may not be to get the ball himself. His goal is to keep his opposition from doing that. So I get it. It just sounded really butthurt, but tagging is good. Bring back the tag. We've seen the benefits of it these past couple weeks across the league.
Oh yeah, I'm all in favor of it.
Like, have 2 taggers like the Hawks can. If you have those particularly difficult matchups, have McGinnis on the smaller one and Connor Nash on the bigger one.
What I liked about this game was that Hawthorn made Melbourne get resourceful. Like, Kazi Pickett wasn't the one to do all the damage.
Blake Hardwick did a great job on him, limited him to 5 disposals. He done that to Cody Waitman the previous week as well. Hardwick is going to gain a lot of respect going into next year as one of the best small defenders of the league.
Instead, the guys that really stepped up for the Ds. Up front, I thought Jake Melksham was excellent. In the back, Christian Salem, Jake Lever. Ultimately, it's clear who the better team is here. But the reason I like Sam Mitchell so much as a coach is he forces teams to go away from their biggest strengths. And even without Newcomb, that still had to happen in this game. They tried a few different things on Max Gawn. I actually like what Max Ramsden did against him, and that allowed Ned Reeves to play elsewhere. Reeves played mostly up front, but also got some time in the defense in 50. And then eventually Reeves did go to Gawn, and they subbed Ramsden out. That's how Jai Sarong got in. This Hawthorn team is such a fun study because I think you learn more about their opponents through watching them and through what Sam Mitchell sees. It's like, all right, what do we need to take away? What's important to these guys?
Also, really happy that Jai Sarong did manage to get back. This was his first AFL game of the season, just his 4th overall. He had been away from football for a couple months because of pericarditis, which is, I believe, the inflammation of the sac around the heart.
Other observations from this game are Max Gawn related. When he was getting interviewed after the game, this was his 200. The veins popping out of his head are really intimidating.
I believe they did chair him off, so fuck you, Kane Corns.
He wasn't going nuts or anything, but he still got the veins popping out. It's like someone at any height with that. Well, I mean, someone over 5'6". If someone really short has that, you just look at them like look at the little dweeb. But anyone bigger than that, it's intimidating. And then you get up to 6'10", 6'11", and it's really scary. Also, his son was scared by everything before the game. We've seen that with kids when they're, carried out or they run out with the team many times. But
like Jack Zeebel's daughter looked like she was a bit scared by stuff. I think there was a Collingwood player's kid who got scared this week. I think it was Will Hoskin Elliott's son because it was his 200.
But the highlight was at one point, George Gawn was holding a Sharon and dropped it. And now he has one more bounce than Max has had in his 200 game.
He's the captain of the no bounce team, yes?
Oh, yeah, easily.
I need to find out what the record is for games played without a bounce.
The other thing, talking back to McGinnis, Oliver did get a nice late goal to put the Ds up 21 with 13 minutes left because they had to drop the tag to send guys further forward and had to get more aggressive at that point. If the score wasn't a factor, they would have stuck with it. I mean, he was following him so closely. It was like, if you're on the bench, I'm on the bench. It's like, I'm going to be your worst nightmare all fucking day. Trent Rivers led the Demons with 27 disposals. He does a really good job pushing forward and engineering play, moving out of the back. And really did a lot of that in this game.
Rivers is really the unsung player out of that 2019 draft class for the Ds, because you had Luke Jackson with their first pick, then Kazi Pickett with their second, and then Rivers.
Rivers also had 10 marks, 496 meters gained. Jack Viney, 25 disposals, 8 marks, 7 tackles. Christian Petrarca, a goal and a behind off 22 disposals, 13 contested possessions, 7 clearances.
Is he best on ground in this one? Case to be made for Viney for sure.
Case could be made for
Rivers, of course.
Case could be made for Max Gawn with his 22 hitouts, 20 disposals, 7 marks and a behind. Christian Salem, 20 disposals and 8 marks. He kind of ensured that things wouldn't get very deep into the defensive 50. Jake Lever, 19 disposals, 13 marks, 10 interceptions, 7 intercept marks.
Remember, if you get to 11, Gil murders you.
And then Jake Melksham, despite some early set shot struggles, kicked 3-4. Inside 50s, it got out of hand late, ended up 61-39. Hawks did win clearances 35-26, even without Newcomb, but without Newcomb, the lack of tackling showed. 55-42 on tackles in favor of the D's.
Brian Myers' friend, James Warple. This is good. This is like Buster Posey's good friend, Hunter Pence.
I want Warple to come join Brian. He's like exactly the type of player the Cats could use, actually.
But Warple with 30 disposals and 11 clearances.
He doesn't rank super high in fantasy most weeks because handballs don't rank as well as kicks, and he's very handball heavy.
But very handball efficient. Carl Amon with 27 disposals, 14 marks and 602 meters. Connor Nash with 25, 15 contested and 8 clearances. Jarman Impey with 23 disposals has been up and down this year. This was more up.
I don't think he's been down very often.
He'd been subbed out a few times. James Sicily, 23 disposals and 7 marks. I guess the disposal number is low by his standards. Blake Hardwick, 22 and 8 marks, again, while limiting Kazi Pickett. Will Daigle from 20 and 9 marks. Jack, that's good, Scrimshaw with 20 disposals. Connor McDonald, damn handy fantasy pickup for me. Gave me 104 off a 2-goal, 19 disposal, 8-mark performance. And I made the grand final in my first year playing in our draft league, so cool.
I had a higher score than you. I was just matched up against the even higher score.
Harry Morrison with 19 disposals and 9 marks.
Harry!
As I said, earned his spot from that Collingwood game. Josh Weddle, 16 and 10 marks as well. I like how this Hawthorn team is trending in so many ways, that they went younger and they got as many good performances as they do. And so it's surprising performers even during the season.
Fremantle 8-10-58, defeated by Port Adelaide 11-8-74. This was your game. So like third quarter was really where they pulled away, even though score wasn't that lopsided, 20-7. It was where things definitely got out of reach. Over the two middle terms, Port outscored the Dockers 45-22.
It was a heavy pressure game from Port's end, particularly. The Dockers were very willing to go uncontested. It was a very different game plan for them. Not really like the freeze mantle we saw early in the year. They were really trying to work outside, keep the game out of the corridor, because that's where Port are able to punish so often. And so I get that game plan from Justin Longyear, and the fact that they stayed as close as they did for much of the game made me think that plan was somewhat of a success in limiting the power. Yeah, they averaged 20 uncontested marks a quarter going into this game. They had 36 in the first quarter. So an extremely different game plan. But the Dockers offensively weren't helping their own cause with kicks inside 50. When Port got clearances, and they got a decent amount of them, they got out pretty easily. Jason Horne-Francis, only 14 disposals, but 11 contested possessions and 8 clearances to lead the power, including 4 center clearances. So often his clearance work led to goals. You notice that in the middle quarters when the power managed to take over the game. At the same time, Freo had some late misses at goal going into halftime. They'd responded to the Port forward pressure. They brought enough of their own, but they didn't make it show on the scoreboard. Even with Tom Emmett having a debut goal, he ended up having 2. Great story, Emmett. A more mature age draft pick, 21 years old, making his debut after being drafted 41st overall last year out of Sturt in the Sandful.
21 years old, ancient.
Battled cancer at 16, had a serious Achilles tendon injury at age 18, and really liking the early work from him, attack on the ball, came in for Sonny Walters, and made his absence feel less obvious. If the Dockers go pressure first and speed first like they should in 2024, I can see Emmett working his way into a steady role. But it was clearance dominance that continued for the Power in the third. So many goals from stoppages, playing through high pressure, and really the only controversy or anything that came out of the game otherwise was Tom Jonas initially coming off having an HIA but not getting the SCAT 5 test. Then after he played a little bit more, the third, they decided, let's be more cautious and bring him down. People questioning why he just didn't get the test to begin with. Great job, Mark Fisher. The fact that they fumbled the bag on this again is really puzzling. They're trying to make it out as being more cautious. Then why did you let him out on the oval again in the first place before doing the SCAT 5? He was not concussed, but still.
You would think you would have learned.
Nope. Even though the game wasn't that far out of reach on the scoreboard at any time, it didn't feel like a game Port were going to lose for a while. Freo only got to within an 8-point margin in the second half, and that was pretty quickly after the third quarter started. It stayed in that 3 to 4 goal range pretty much the whole way. And even with Caleb Sarong doing Caleb Sarong things, the Butters, Rosie, Horne-Francis trio dominated. Horne-Francis, not as many touches, but huge impact. Butters probably picking up another 3 votes. and a real chance for him to sneak into things and maybe steal the Brownlow. Butters a goal from 31 disposals. Rosie couldn't finish on the scoreboard, 2 behinds for 24 disposals and 600 meters gained. Another very active game for Ollie Wines as well. Not one of the main pieces in the center anymore, getting some wing and half forward time, but it's working. 25 disposals and 10 marks for him. 20 disposals for Xavier Dersma, who had 7 marks as well. Dylan Williams, 20 disposals, 10 marks and 640 meters out of defense. Willem Drew behind from 18 disposals, 12 contested possessions, and 7 clearances. Love the game that he's played these past couple years, and I think the rest of the footy world is catching up to us in terms of giving respect. Kane Farrell and Alir both got into the teens of disposals and had 9 marks in defense as well. Port were 19% more efficient inside 50 than the Dockers, which makes complete sense based on Fremantle's troubles with those connections into the 50 and lining themselves up for good shots. And Port worked through being -9 in free kicks. They were -16 tackles as well, but with more control of the ball and greater disposal efficiency, you get why the Dockers tackled more.
Andrew Brayshaw with 2 behinds and 32 disposals. Liam Henry a behind, 31 disposals, 516 meters. Lockie Schultz, 27 disposals, 7 marks, 3 assists. Caleb Sarong a behind, 27 disposals, 19 contested possessions, and 11 clearances. Luke Ryan, 25 disposals, 9 marks, 633 meters. Jordan Clark, 22 disposals and 7 marks. James Aish, 21 disposals and 7 marks. Corey Wagner, 20 disposals and 7 tackles. And Hayden Young, a behind, 19 disposals, 11 contested possessions, and 7 tackles.
Jordan Clark, when he had an offensive one-on-one, was up against Willie Rioli. Nothing egregious there, even though Clark isn't a great one-on-one guy. Wagner got punished at times. Really, both the W's, Corey Wagner and Carl Warner, when they couldn't stick marks, couldn't receive handballs well, those mistakes were punished pretty easily. It's awards time here in round 23. Last week's mark of the round was Aaron Naughton crashing into the pack, going largely against James Blake. It was a good crop of marks, and I didn't have any problem with that one winning it. Your round 3 nominees, Jack Zeeble going over Liam Baker, getting the knee to the back of his head. Cooper Sharman, Saturday night, over Tom Stewart. There wasn't much contact in there, but it was a clean mark. And on Sunday, James O'Donnell, who's really found a home for himself in that Bulldogs back 6 with some of the injuries they had, he's gotten that opportunity. Came in for the side of the pack to mark mostly over Tim English. I feel like you got to go with Zeeble here between it being the finale, the vertical he got on it. I loved this play. And even Liam Baker was totally cool with it afterward. He even posted it to his own Instagram.
Yeah, Zeebel's my pick too.
I also like that it was the 2 number 7s on each other for that play too, and 2 smaller number 7s.
Goal of the week, your round 22 winner was Will Day, taking the ball through a stoppage, shedding a Jack McRae tackle attempt and finishing straight on from 35 meters out. We both preferred Sam Powell-Pepper with yet another running snap from the right pocket.
Once again, this proves the Australians love, plays where guys are able to burst through stoppages. That's how Tex won it in round 21.
Your round 23 nominees, you've got Dustin Martin waiting for the ball to bounce after Luke McDonald falls. He runs away from multiple defenders and finishes on the outside of his boot on the right. The angle that this ball traveled out made it so interesting to me.
And again, on the right for Dusty.
You had Isaac Rankin fighting off Dane Rampy, keeping the ball alive after a Nick Blakey spoil, playing along the boundary and then hitting a banana from a tough angle. And we've got Zach Butters. He gets a tap down from Willem Drew off a forward 50 stoppage and snaps over his head with Corey Wagner bearing down on him. All of these are solid. I don't see one that's way better than the others.
I could see Butters getting a lot of love with the pressure that was on there and the angle at which he kicked that in terms of going toward the ground and having to sky that thing. But the Rankin Trinata stands out to me between keeping the ball alive on the boundary, having to fight off a guy like Rampy for it, and then kicking from that angle. He provides more of those chances for deep pocket goals for the Crows, whether or not they're huge highlight reel things. This one was.
I kind of like Dusty, but I will have no issue with any of these 3 winning.
What do you just rank it in order of when they happen? Dusty, then Rankin, then Butters?
It's really tough. I guess. They're all pretty solid, though. I don't think any of them are like top 3, Brownlow night contenders, but they're all solid. Main character, round 22, the winner was Caleb Marchbank for maybe touching that Christian Petrarca kick. Round 23, we have we ranked them. We have a top 5. There's an obvious number 1, but this was a week full of narratives, and all 5 deserve to be celebrated or
Ridiculed.
recognized, acknowledged.
Number 5, Banners. And I'm not talking about Bailey Banfield in this case. We love Banfield. He did get an AC joint injury this week, which was sad when he finally got the chance to be back in. But the Lions and Giants banners have to be recognized in some way, so it's there at number 5.
Number 4, Jamie Cripps. 5 goals to lead the Eagles to their shock win over the Bulldogs, giving his former club a final spot as well.
Number 3, Jesse Hogan with the career-high 9-goal performance to lead the Giants in their highest scoring effort in their history, biggest ever margin of victory, getting them that huge percentage boost.
Number 2, Deven Robertson, who at the start of the weekend was like, oh, that's your winner. He had his jumper rip, threw it away, has nearly quadrupled in Instagram followers since.
Yeah, he's gained like 800 more followers during the process of us recording this episode. But number 1 is the goal umpire. He incorrectly called Ben Key's late kick it behind. It preserved the Swans' lead. He's a South Australian too, and I believe he grew up a Crow supporter, which makes it even more crushing for him. But the error was clear. It knocks the team out of the finals race, with the Swans ending up clinching the spot this week.
I mean, you can put it on the whole umpire crew for nobody reviewing this, but yes, Daniel Hoskin, goal umpire, you are the one. You are the main character this week. I don't get people being mad about his name being mentioned as long as he's not, like, getting doxxed, because, I mean,
if you're an AFL umpire, your name's on the sheets everywhere.
Yeah, your name is, like, listed with the lineups. Why should the goal judge be any different?
The goal umpires aren't listed, in as many places, but their names are out there.
Yeah. Don't dox people, that's all.
Yeah, like, you don't have to be David Roden to be known as a goal umpire. And David Roden is awesome. I'm glad he was on the Eagles game. Just seeing him smile when I was smiling for those goals was great. But, do we have enough drama left for round 24? Even with a lot more dead rubbers now?
Something will happen. I don't know what.
I hope the Giants are able to crack finals. Even if it requires taking the drama out of Sunday with the Cats beating the Dogs. I just want the Giants in. I mean, we have a chance for a Sydney Derby final again. I would love also for the Blues and Giants to just run it back 2 weeks later. Some great possibilities there, and the top 4 is still far from decided as well in terms of what their positions will be.
You guys already know the whole deal with socials, so we're going to do this the minimalist approach. Twitter, Americans Footy.
YouTube, Americans Footy.
Me, Castle Media.
Me, Benjamin HK01.
Cat, Instagram, cat named Brian.
Goodbye.